Well, the first word I'd like to say is to my players. There's something really big about our players. We have done a tremendous job. Our preparation was fantastic, so I'm really proud of my players. And I'd like my second word to be directed to my opponent. This was a big team with big players, very well coached, and they won fairly, even though the match was determined in details, but that's what football is like, and we have to accept the decision and, as I said, congratulate them.
Abel, bom, sobre o jogo, eu queria que você
Abel, about the match, I'd like you to give your personal impressions about the match and how you lived it. You talked about details. Were these tactical or emotional details that define the match? And you're also a voice that Palmeiras supporters really listen to. And I wanted you to talk to Palmeiras fans about Luan. Luan is a big player and a great man. This is a player I really like. Great technical quality, and I'm sure that in Europe he would be a huge defender, just as he is in Brazil. But I don't like to talk about players individually. I don't think that's right. I think all our players played incredibly, and the match was really determined in the details. So what I want to say is there are factors about the match that you simply have no control over that are just random. Maybe you just turn your back and the ball will touch your hand, and the referee determined that that would be a penalty kick, and that it is what it is. We can't lose any more time about it. That's just a detail. A second ball that hit the ball, that hit the hand of one player, and the ref saw in the VAR that it was a penalty, and he called a penalty. Abel, congratulations. The team was brilliant. There was this massive group of fans, and everyone left the stadium very proud of the club. There was no standout player among the team. They all played like an orchestra, and we know that when the orchestra does well, that's because they had a good conductor. And I know that you'll be modest and say that wasn't the case, but I'd like to commend you. FIFA talked about Thiago, and I would really like to give you the highlight. Now, I'd like to challenge you with one question. Two scenarios for two great coaches. One was Jesus, the other was Gallardo. One was for a year ahead of its team and the other for several years. I know that the future belongs to God, but what does your heart want with Palmeiras? Well, I live one day at a time, and I don't like comparisons. I think that every coach has their own style. I'm still really young. I'm only 5 years in professional football. I have 5 years in training, but with professional football, I've been with the team for only 5 years, and that's how I like to live, one day at a time. We've built a lot in a very short period of time here with Palmeiras, and this is a good question. Now, I will confide that I'm bleeding inside, but I'll tell you this: I will forbid my players from not celebrating the second place. I want them to go to the hotel and have a beer, and when we get to the plane, I will obligate them to celebrate, because if they don't, they'll have a bone to pick with me, because this was an incredibly competent opponent. They changed from 3-4-2, then 4-3-2. We had a match very collective, as you all said, and that's how I see our team. And individual standouts come within that collective match, as Dudu, as Danilo, And it's interesting that the player of the match was Rudiger, who was a tremendous player, didn't let any ball in. And curiously, we have to congratulate our opponent. But I can't fail to value the work that we did here. So once again, I have to say I'm really proud of my players. Good evening, Abel. Before anything, I'd like to congratulate you and your players, not only for your performance on the pitch, but also for how elegantly you behaved during the award. That being said, how can you explain a match where Chelsea controlled the ball for 2/3 of the game and you were able to go after the game? And that's why I asked you, how did you live those penalties both for and against you? How did you live those moments? How did you see the moves and how did you react to them? Well, I think the penalties that were called were what they were, and we have to accept what happened. The ball hit his hands, and those are the rules. When what was seen was called, we have to accept that and move forward. There's no other way of dealing with it. And your second question was? Oh, right. They didn't let anyone pick the ball. I mean, you have to ask Chelsea why they let the other team get the ball in the Champions League tournament. Our players and I, we do not play alone. So I'm not going to go into the details or individual quality of players. I mean, do you know how many Englishmen were playing? Do you know why I'm sad sometimes? Do you know how many Englishmen started with the team? How many Brazilian men played in my team? How many British men played in the other team? I mean, that's food for thought for you. I mean, we played against the Libertadores champion, and how many Englishmen were playing in Chelsea. I'm not going to speak to anything else because the work that we did, and I'm sorry that sometimes people don't understand that we are not on a level playing field. Now, we've done a lot and we have a lot to be proud of. I don't uh, pass the buck to anyone, it's always with me. But it's also about competence. That's why I'm saying you have to ask our opponent how many English players are playing in Chelsea. I mean, this is an English club after all, right? Or how many of them started with Chelsea? Good evening, Abel. I wanted you to talk a little bit about the participation of Palmeiras supporters here today and how they behaved for these 120 minutes of the match after the final whistle, before the match, over the course of this entire week. I mean, we saw stadiums filled with Palmeiras supporters, and I wanted you to talk a little bit about that. It was brutal. It was fantastic. We are 15 hours away from our country, and I said this after the previous match. For those who don't know Palmeiras, I think we made it clear how big our club is, and I mean, we just as much as them wanted to win because we do not lose our head. We went into the match and we're being evaluated every day, and we really wanted to win and share this happiness with them. Unfortunately, we faced up against a very competent opponent as well. I mean, I didn't see Everton save many difficult balls. And within our resources, we were able to be extremely competitive. We had 3 or 4 transitions that we could have done more calmly, but we have to accept what football gives us. We have to learn from everything that happens to us. I mean, this is all a lot of baggage for us. This brings experience, but it was massive what they did.